Since the beginning of time, before recorded history, great men have thought to themselves, what's up with this beautiful landscape? Why isn't it doing the thing I want it to do? So somebody thought to themselves, you know, we got the Bay of Fundy over here, and we got everything over here, but we can't sail a boat across it unless we go all the way around Nova Scotia. And that's a big pain in the butt. So a Mr. Ketchum, unrelated to Ash, decided, what if we built a railway to carry boats 27 kilometers across the Chignecto Isthmus? Now take a look at this. Say that your name's Henry. It's 1800s, and you want to move your goods from Pictou, Nova Scotia to St. John, New Brunswick. Now, Pictou, Nova Scotia is right here, and St. John, New Brunswick is right over here. Now, it doesn't look very far, does it? You see, in a straight line, it's really not. But if you were a conventional sailor of the time, you had to go like this.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning?
And that is actually a really long way to go. Now, another problem with that route is that right down here, Cape Sable Island, that's a really dangerous spot. A lot of people crash their ships down there, and you don't want to crash your ships because that costs you money and maybe your life. Now, back in the 1600s, there was a guy, he said, you know what? There's actually a better way of doing this. He said, if you were to go from the Bay of Fundy right here, straight across the land into the Northumberland Strait, that would save you a lot of time. Now, the problem with land is that it's not very good for boats. And they decided it would be too hard to dig a ditch because that's really difficult. They were thinking of that back in the 1820s, and they didn't want to do that, right? Because that takes a lot of effort. And he was a real smart fella, and he decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build a train, because this was the 1880s and people loved trains. He said, I'm going to build a double-track train. It's going to go from the Northumberland Strait into the Bay of Fundy, and it's going to go at the narrowest point along the Chignecto Isthmus, right here. Boop! Now there's a route with some chest hair. Wouldn't that be a great idea? And at least somebody thought it was a great idea. The governor of Canada gave him a bunch of money to do it. And today we're going to go look at what he built and what's left of it. Now, whereas the waters of the Northumberland Strait are fairly good, you know, there's not a whole lot of tides up and down. The Bay of Fundy on this side, we're talking 55-foot differences between high tide and low tide, which is a pretty big deal if you want to slap a boat into it. So they had to make this pump station. These are the remains of the lock. This way they could bring the boats essentially into a dry dock, drain it out, hoist the boats up, get them on their way. And this is all it really remains of, is just these foundation blocks here. Apparently, whoa! There's some deep snow here. Now the idea was that a boat would come up the Bay of Fundy and get lifted up here. They had a whole bunch of hydraulic jacks. They would jack the whole boat up. And then they had twin steam locomotives with 18 feet in between standard gauge rails. They'd slap the boat on top of that and then just drive it right across the Chignecto Isthmus. Incredible. Whoop, whoop. Rail lines. And then he was going to put a train on each one. The big old smokestacks. Who knows? This is the old days. And then the two trains were going to be connected to a fully rigged boat. And that boat could weigh up to 2,000 tons, which was a lot back in the 1880s, but not a whole lot now. And you might think, isn't it a little bit odd to lift a wooden ship out of the water, fully loaded? Seems odd to me, but I guess they thought it was going to work. And so from here on outwards, we've got essentially 27 kilometers of uninterrupted rail beds that go all the way to the Northumberland Strait. Have you ever heard of a recession? They're not new, they happen all the time. Sometimes assets aren't worth what they're supposed to be, And one of the assets that wasn't worth what it was supposed to be was this rail line. So there was a run on the banks back in the 1890s, and then, you know, everything crashed, as it does. And Mr. Ketchum lost all of his money. And then nobody would give him any more money. And then they had to stop building the railway. And then he died. There is still a lot of this stuff out here. And these days it operates as the Henry Ketchum, I guess, multi-use trail, something like that. You can see ATVers come down here, snowmobilers come down here. In the summertime you can walk it, and it's a nice long trail here for community purposes. So it's not gone. There is still a living legacy of this railway that failed. Another lasting little bit of this railway that never was this bridge that leads to nowhere. They cut this stone in England, and then they hauled this stone from England across the Atlantic to build this bridge. And then they never drove a train across it. So here at the Tidnish end of the railway, there is perhaps even less to indicate what all went down here. But there is a provincial park. So there's a really nice beach here, some campsites, and a plaque to honor Mr. Ketchum and his dream. So I hope this video has been helpful. Maybe you learned something. I sure did. Come back next time. Maybe I'll ride a motorcycle and it won't be so cold. Plus I had to hang out with my wife and my dog.